everybody, it's XPGamesNL here, and welcome back to a new episode in the ever-growing list of Fire Emblem Builder tutorials. I'm once again your host, XPGamesNL, and welcome back to a new Fire Emblem Builder tutorial. Today we're covering a very interesting topic, which is rather special. By the time this gets uploaded, by the way, there's a couple of things I want to get out of the way first. First of all, we're finally part of the YouTube Partner Program, everyone. That means that I finally can start earning money from my videos, but the most important part about the Partner Program for me is the fact that now that I'm part of it, that should mean that my videos would get pushed more by the algorithm, which also means that I get more exposure, which helps other people get to know my content and get help from tutorials like these or get enjoyment out of my videos, and it helps me just gain more popularity on my channel and get to entertain more people. So that's one. And two is that at the time of recording this, I'm actually working on a tutorial on the skills as well, which I really wanted to get out. I felt very motivated to start on that. And I'm starting to make slow steps towards preparing a video on how to write a story. That one is kind of Fire Emblem specific, but I also wanted to focus on stories in general. So that's also something you can look forward to when it comes to Fire Emblem Builder tutorial stuff. So there's a bunch of cool stuff coming up, so stay tuned for that. But today's topic are Gaiden Chapters in Fire Emblem Game Boy Advanced. Now, if you know standard Gaiden Chapters in Fire Emblem Game Boy Advance, you would know that there is a varying amount of different types of ways on how you can initiate a Gaiden Chapter. There's, for an example, a chapter somewhere in the game of Fire Emblem 12 or something. There are really weird, sometimes, mechanics you have to do in order to get to a Gaiden chapter in some particular Fire Emblem games. And that doesn't only mean that I'm talking about Gaiden chapters here, I'm talking about any type of requirement you need to go to a weird chapter, or any weird requirement needed to go to a chapter that is unique in a sense. So, today we're, of course, talking about Gaiden chapters, but let me quickly open up Fire Emblem 7 in the meantime, because I can show you exactly some weird stuff that Fire Emblem 7 actually pulls out of its hat when it comes to Gaiden chapters, because Fire Emblem 7 does some really wacky stuff with getting chapter requirements and having Gaiden chapters and stuff Gaiden chapter related. So, basically, in today's video, what we'll be talking about Gaiden chapters and how to set up those Gaiden chapters. But the weird thing about Gaiden chapters is that, in theory, a Gaiden chapter is nothing more than an if statement I've covered in my FEBuilder Advanced videos before. It's nothing more than an if statement, but that if statement is sending you to two different chapters. So, for an example, if we have chapter 1, for an example, or prologue, A Girl from the Plains, instead of going to chapter 1, you go to chapter 6 for some reason. That is basically how a Gaiden chapter in theory works. For chapter 7, the Gaiden chapter you unlock after chapter 7, you simply get a prompt, go to the Gaiden chapter, yes or no. I don't really know if there's any special events that is supposed to give you access to the Gaiden chapter. If it's a tutorial, blah blah blah, should text bubble, well, go to the Black Shadow. You want to help? Yeah, you can basically make a choice. I don't know if there's anything specific you get to do. This one is a Gaiden chapter you can always go to, like most Gaiden chapters in FE8, if you can even call them Gaiden chapters. But stuff like Gaiden chapters in like chapter 13, for an example, one of the Elliewood chapters, I think that this particular one is blah blah blah. There's a temporary flag. So this particular Gaiden chapter requirement is just visit the village, and then you can select yes or no if you want to go to that particular chapter. So that's interesting. The Dread Isles also has another one, Whereabouts Unknown. Port Kiris is another one. For Port Curious, you have to keep one or more green units alive. I think. If a single, it's just an ASM event. If one of them is still alive, you get to go to this chapter. Otherwise, you immediately go to Pirate Ship. Okay, interesting. For Chapter 18, you have a turn requirement, if I recall correctly. You have to kill Uhai within a certain amount of turns. Which should be here. It should be somewhere here. Shows map, shows text, duration, do not. Jump to where, allow skipping. Well, it's probably this ASM function or something along those lines. It's at least something that has to do with a turn count. This one, then there is this one where you have to kill Kishuna in order to go to the next chapter, and you need to have Nils and Ninian leveled up, and they're all stored in these ASM functions, which goes for this chapter. I've never played this chapter, actually. I've never managed to make it to this particular chapter. What's actually in these chests? I'm getting curious now. Pretty garbage loot now that I look at it. I've never managed to reach this chapter because I am not good enough at the game. And I don't meet the requirements usually. Genesis is a pretty interesting one. If you go to Living Legend, you will have to gain a certain amount of experience, which is... if Hawkeye is alive, Hawkeye apparently needs to be alive, and this is probably the one that talks about the experience, or this one. I don't know which one of the two it is, but at least it talks about experience, and you can go to Living Legend, or to Genesis, or if you do not reach Genesis, there's this event that decides whether you go to Linus's chapter or Lloyd's chapter, and the one... that all depends on the levels of the main lords. And so basically there's a bunch of different weird kind of Gaiden chapter requirements, and FE7 is like the king of weird and obscure Gaiden chapter requirements, because there's a lot of different stuff that you would normally not know. Genesis is one that I do frequently get. It just depends on how much experience you gain in Living Legend. And a bunch of the ones where you just need to have a character alive, I do kind of usually get as well. I do think Chapter 18X is kind of hard to reach because you need to defeat Uhai in a certain number of turns. But FE7 is like the king of different types of Gaiden chapter requirements. So yeah, that's basically how that works. I've shown an example of FE7, so let's dive into how you would do it in FE8. So the FE8 Gaiden chapters, well, this is technically speaking a Gaiden chapter, but most of the FE8 Gaiden chapters, they're not actually here. They are oh wait, they're actually not here. Oh wait, it's Landing at Tazel is a Gaiden chapter, technically speaking, which is kind of funny. There's just a... where is it? I'm blind, aren't I? Oh, here it is. There it is. This one starts immediately after you complete the Phantom Ship, which is a pretty wacky and interesting thing that happens in Fire Emblem Game Boy Advanced and Fire Emblem 8. But the thing is that Gaiden chapters in FE8 do not really have any requirements, which is interesting, and you can barely even call them Gaiden chapters, because usually Gaiden chapters are referred to by them being a certain, or having to, or requiring certain chapters, or requiring certain conditions to unlock. So in this case too, for like Unbroken Heart, that's a chapter you automatically go to. There's no way you cannot go to that chapter in the main story. I do not really know how the term Gaiden chapter came to be. I guess that like stems from where does it actually stem from? I think it stems from Fire Emblem 6, because in Fire Emblem 6 there were these optional maps. I could even open Fire Emblem 6 to demonstrate that, This is all just background info, by the way. Feel free to skip if this doesn't interest you as much. Where is Fue no Tsurugi? There you go. I think that there's a couple of... There should be, like, Gaiden chapters somewhere in the game, or trial maps. I think, at least... I haven't done my research into this, but I think that the whole Gaiden chapter requirement thing, the whole reason they're called Gaiden Chapters, is because Fire Emblem 6 has a couple of maps where if you play them, you'll instead hear the Fire Emblem Gaiden March to Deliverance song that's also in Fire Emblem Echoes. I think that's the reason. These are those extra maps, by the way, if you're curious. I've never reached these, but they're particular maps you can go to, and I think these particular songs have the Gaiden player theme. Yeah, they have the Gaiden player and enemy phase playing. So that's interesting to note. I think that's where the whole term Gaiden chapter came from, and once it was created, people just stuck with it. So how do we actually set up a Gaiden chapter? So if we go to, say, the Fall of Renee, the way you set up Gaiden chapters is just like with if statements and flags that I've talked about in my previous 2 FEBuilder Advanced videos. You want to actually focus on doing stuff with checks. So Gaiden chapters can be anything that you assign a check or a flag to. You can get very creative with stuff. Like, for an example, if you visit 3 villages and talk to 2 characters on the map and recruit them, that's how you unlock a Gaiden chapter. The thing you have to do is you have to, like, turn on certain flags and then keep checking if those flags are on. And at the end of the chapter, you want to check if a condition is true or not, or if you have a condition that is being met. And if it's being met, then you say, okay, I'm gonna go to the Gaiden chapter. If it's not being met, then you go to the normal chapter. And FE7 has like a script for that, where you can accept if you want to go to the next Gaiden chapter or not, and Fire Emblem 6 kind of forces you to do that, which is interesting. In this particular case, I will not show you the option to go to a different chapter. I will not give you like that yes or no text box. Feel free to instead refer to the previous episode on different choices in Fire Emblem to take a look at how you do the yes or no text boxes. So that's something to keep in mind. But for now, as you can see, this is our end event, and we can do something very silly. Let's just say that we create a ranged event. Where is my ranged event? Let's just create a ranged event where if Seth's or any player character stops in the ranged event, I should set this to ranged. And we'll make it the end of the bridge here. If any character stops in this ranged event, create an event where the player army invades, which is actually what we want, because it has to be a player that enters that particular spot. If a player invades that spot or stands on that spot, we'll turn on a flag. And I'll show you how that works after I've like written and set up all of the code and events for it, so I'll return to you in a second. See you in a minute. Alright, so what I did is actually kind of simple. I implemented something that is quite standard, nothing really too big. So if we go to this particular ranged event, if we click it, we will actually end up in a little thing I'll demonstrate in a second. Actually, I can demonstrate it. What's this error? What's this error about? It's good to know what the error is about. Ah, it's a text error. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. It's just an item description. So if we go to the emulator, boot it up. Why is this... Okay, why was that glitchy? We just skip a lot of skedaddle. We play the chapter as normally. We'll instead move set up to the top here. I will actually just play the chapter normally. Let's hope Tim doesn't die here. I don't think he will. He'll be fine. He actually doubles. Wow, he's broken. Let's summon a guy here. This might get very glitchy, by the way. Yep, because the Phantom doesn't have a portrait. I skipped what exactly happened. But I think we can trigger the event multiple times, actually. Yep. What's this? It says go to final map. Gotta keep this with me. So what will happen now is if we kill O'Neil real quick. What will happen is instead, if we click the save button now, we'll go to the final chapter of the game, because we got the final chapter thing. This is probably unbeatable, I don't know. Regardless if it's unbeatable or not, we actually went to the final chapter, but if we decide to replay the game, and instead we just wipe the floor with all of these guys, and we just say, well, I'll just completely obliterate these idiots. Then if correct, we should just be able to progress to Chapter 2 instead. We can actually steal from that guy, that's hilarious. How does the Phantom do against O'Neil? Oh, not that bad. Oh, he missed. What? Who got a Hoplin guard? What happened? What? Okay, that was weird. What happened there with the Hoplin guard? Can we replicate that? Hold up. No, what the frick happened there? I don't know. Whatever the case, let's just kill O'Neil real quick and blah blah blah. And as you can see, we instead go to Chapter 1 now. So basically what this means is that there is indeed a Gaiden chapter split, which is now dependent on that ranged event here in this particular spot on the map. Now how I set this up is kind of simple. This is just a ranged event. I can go to that real quickly here. You see, as you can see, I can even zoom this in. It's on top of like the bridge, and if you go to that event, you'll see that if any player stops in the range of that event, they will say like, what's this? It says skip to final chapter, and then I just turn a global flag on. So I set a global flag to true, which makes it so that something happens. We actually switched something on. Now, what I do at the end of the chapter is I check whether I've turned that flag on. See, I check if that flag is on, then you go to the if statement. If the flag has not been turned on, then execute this, so go to Chapter 1, and if it has been turned on, go to chapter the final map. The Chapter 21X. And if you want to spice things up and want to make the transition somewhat more interesting and more smooth, you can also say and set different conversations in this particular split, depending on what map you're going to, of course. You can add some different event stuff to that, but this is a very basic way of setting a Gaiden chapter requirement. And in this case, it's based on turning a flag on, and turning a flag on can mean literally anything. Let's say a player has, I was going to say, traveled a certain amount of tiles on the map, but that's really hard to sort of keep track of. But you can say, like, let's say the player has, like, gained so much experience. There could be a check for that. Or if the player has defeated all bosses on the map. Let's say the player on turn 10 finds an item that is a desert treasure, and at the same time the player kills a boss. You can make that work. It will be tricky to integrate all of those flags properly, but you can actually make that work and lock a Gaiden chapter behind stupid means. Like very stupidly obscure means. You can basically do that. So what I wanted to do next and showcase is in Chapter 4, in one of the last tutorials, I showed you, it's not here anymore. Oh wait, is it actually? No, it's not here anymore. This is base Fire Emblem stuff. But it's vanilla Fire Emblem. Wait, actually, this is a recruitment thing. I wanted to go to the end event. Oh, it's still present in the end event. Okay. So, the thing is you can also set that for the villages. So, let's say instead, like, didn't we set, like, a flag to be on? Yeah, the no XX loot route XX. That particular flag has been turned on by visiting the villages. But you can also say, instead of going to chapter 5, you can run another check on that particular flag and say, I go to chapter 6. Which is what Fire Emblem 6 does when you go to the Western Isles, when you visit one of the 2 villages. That's how you set that up. Now, now it has come full circle, because last time I talked about how you can set up a Gaiden chapter for that, and now I'm back at telling you that there's a way to do different choices. So, what I'll do is I'll go back to the Fall of Renee, and I actually want to do something funny now. I want to also show you something, not only checking flags, but you can also check other interesting stuff. So anything that is a check, you can basically use to set different Gaiden chapter requirements. So there is a check for if a unit exists on the map. If a unit is present on the map, say you're supposed to do an escort mission, and if the escort dies, you still progress in the game. You don't get a game over, you still progress, but you miss out on the Gaiden chapter. You can check if a unit ends in a specific spot on the map, if you want to do a Gaiden chapter. Turn count, if you want to do a turn count, you can say, for an example, if a unit if you complete the map in 25 turns, you go to the Gaiden chapter, leaving a certain amount of enemies alive with the Gaiden chapter. I double-clicked by accident. You can also say chapter, well, chapter number is not really that interesting. You can also do hard mode exclusive Gaiden chapters, which is kind of funny if you really want to. You can do creature campaign checks, which is a bit dumb. Hard mode checks, which once again is like hard mode. Number of enemies, NPCs, if a character has been deployed. Turn count. Get the allegiance. You can actually check if a character has been recruited or not. You can even check that and do that for Gaiden chapter. You can check gold. Let's say you have 15,000 gold. You'll go on a Gaiden chapter where you get robbed of all of it, or not. You can even do stat specific things. You can even get the player's cursor. If you want to be an absolute devious idiot, you can actually get the player's cursor and sort of say, well, I want the player to only go to a Gaiden chapter if their cursor is on, like, the top left tile when they finish the chapter, which is an absolute devious way to do and set up a Gaiden chapter, in my opinion. Yeah, is there anything really I wanted to do? Let's actually just do a Gaiden chapter for easy mode. So, if you're playing in easy mode now, the game will send you to chapter 1, because that's the normal progression. If you're not playing on easy mode, you straight up go to the final map of the game, because, I mean, it's not easy mode anymore. Guys, you gotta be able to beat the final map quite easily that way. Now, I won't actually go over the whole shebang when it comes to playing on easy mode, because that takes a lot of time, because the tutorial is extremely slow. But I'll just make sure to make this quick and show you that we actually do go... Oh wait, I'm stupid. You can just use the debugger for this. I'm a little forgetful. So now we completed the chapter, and we should go to the final chapter. Okay, so what if we instead go to... erase this data, and then go to new game, easy mode. And there's no enemies in easy mode. Oh, wait, it's because it's the first chapter. And then you get an extra turn before the enemies arrive. I see. Easy mode actually sends you to the final chapter of the game. So it's now in reverse. I did an oopsie. Lara Shell just despawned there. But yeah, that's basically another thing you can do. You can also make difficulty-specific Gaiden chapters. And with that, really, I don't think there's anything else I would like to cover besides that. I think that's everything you kind of need to know about Gaiden Chapters. It's just nothing more than a check that sends you to different chapters. So try to copy the structure I've shown you before. This video actually feels kind of short and very light on theory and things you have to do. It's more of a theoretical video. If you want advice on Gaiden Chapters for me and how I would implement them, make the requirement for the Gaiden Chapters something you will most likely not miss easily. Do a turn count that is pretty lenient. You can do something like a character picking up a weapon from an enemy boss, and they will have to keep onto that weapon until they reach a certain chapter. The Last Promise had this with the emblem weapons. If you had all of them, at a certain point you would get an extra chapter. There's just a bunch of stuff where this kind of applies. So yeah, I don't really know anything else to say about this topic. I just hope it was very informative, everything I've said, and that you guys enjoyed this and that you managed to learn something from this. If you did, make sure to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe if you still haven't. Yeah, make sure to share the video with anyone you think would benefit from it. And that's kind of actually everything I have to say. Thank you super much for watching. I'm XPGamesNL, and look forward to those other videos coming up I was talking about earlier. See you somewhere else and somewhere later. Goodbye.